They came through the stars not as conquerors, but as observers. That's what the K'lar told themselves. Tall, scaled beings with curved backs and skin that shimmered under sunlight like steel dipped in oil. They'd been watching Earth for over 300 years, long before they made contact. The elders of their high council, ancient even by their standards, had spoken of humans with caution, fear even. But time made their race arrogant. "They are primitive," said Commander Jeln during his address before deployment. "They fight among themselves. They poison their oceans and burn their forests. They are a species in decline, barely holding on to a collapsing civilization." The council nodded. The young believed it. But the elders had looked deeper. They'd read the transmissions, watched the wars, the revolutions, the heartbreak. They had seen what humans could become when pushed. "Do not provoke the Earthborn," Elder Yal once said, his voice low and trembling with the weight of history. "For when they feel the fire of survival, they burn hotter than suns." Of course, the new regime saw him as outdated. Earth had no spacefaring fleet, no planetary defense systems, no unified government. What threat could a scattered, tribal, emotionally unstable species pose? So the K'lar descended, 50 ships in perfect formation hovering over major cities: New York, Beijing, Mumbai, Lagos, London. They announced themselves with calculated calm. "We come to offer peace and guidance." The world paused. At first, humanity reacted with awe, then confusion, and finally, fear. The K'lar began altering systems, power grids, communications, food production, all with better technology. But they did not ask. They just did. That's when the resistance began. It started small, a hacked feed from some guy in Detroit. "They're not helping us. They're controlling us." Then came the Paris blackout, then the strike in São Paulo, then a missile, homemade, slammed into one of the K'lar's atmospheric stabilizers over Turkey. It didn't bring the ship down, but it sent a message. Earth wasn't interested in being fixed. Jeln watched the events unfold from orbit, confused. He had studied their records. "They've been at war for centuries," he muttered, "against themselves. Why fight us when we bring peace?" "They're not fighting you," whispered K'tul, his advisor. "They're fighting control." By month 3, 2 K'lar ships had been lost to sabotage, not by military strikes but by human will. Farmers planting magnetic charges in wheat fields, children rerouting coolant lines with simple wrenches, mechanics feeding false data into K'lar mapping systems. The aliens never saw it coming. Then came the riots in New York, full-scale resistance in Africa, guerrilla movements in the jungles of Southeast Asia. Every city turned into a battlefield, every back alley a trap. The K'lar underestimated humanity's genius not in building, but in surviving. Still, the K'lar held the skies, until Earth itself rose. Seismic anomalies began. The ship over Iceland was torn apart by a sudden volcanic eruption. The one over California went dark after a random solar flare fried its core systems. "Coincidence," said Jeln, but his voice was tight. Elder Yal's last words echoed through a transmission barely decrypted by their linguists. "You disturbed the sleeping animal. But Earth is not just their home. It is part of them. You didn't invade a planet. You provoked a living organism." Then the storms came. Hurricanes tore through K'lar cloud stabilizers. Lightning struck their cruisers with impossible precision. Earth's weather, once chaotic, now seemed targeted. K'tul stood over the central console, shaking. "It's as if the planet is angry." Jeln finally looked past his own pride. He stared down at the little blue world, burning and storming and screaming back at them. Not through weapons, but through unity, through defiance, through fury. The ocean swallowed the K'lar ship off the coast of Chile without a trace. 1 minute, it hovered with grace, its underbelly glowing a soft violet. The next, the sea raged up like a mouth opening wide, waves towering high, dragging it down into black depths, like a vengeful god claiming a debt. And still, the K'lar called it coincidence. Zeln didn't believe in coincidence anymore. Inside the command ship orbiting above Earth, Zeln stared at the visuals on the holographic table. Blue and green lines that represented global terrain were now flickering with red zones, chaotic weather systems, magnetic disturbances, heat waves, tsunamis. It wasn't just resistance anymore. The planet itself was reshaping, evolving, striking back. "This isn't natural," he muttered, his long fingers tapping the side of his head in frustration. "This isn't how a planet behaves." K'tul stepped beside him, his eyes tired but sharp. "We should have listened to the elders. They didn't just warn us about human weapons or their unpredictable culture. They warned us about the bond." "Bond?" Zeln scoffed. "Between what? Man and machine? They barely maintain stable governments. How can they possibly be bonded to the planet itself?" But K'tul didn't answer with theory or data. He played a recovered feed from the destroyed Chilean ship. The screen buzzed, then cleared. There was a human, female, middle-aged, wearing tattered clothes and standing alone on a beach just before the wave came. She didn't run, didn't scream. She raised her arms and smiled. Then the feed went dark. "They're not just surviving," K'tul whispered. "They're calling it." Zeln wanted to dismiss him. He was a commander, trained in logic, in patterns, in control, but nothing about this mission had followed logic. Humans were not behaving like any race the K'lar had encountered in their vast travels. They were violent, yes, but not just for survival. They were cunning, emotional, wild, and terrifyingly adaptable. Every loss they suffered only seemed to fuel them. The underground networks in Europe had grown smarter. They were coordinating now, launching cyber attacks against K'lar ships with software built from repurposed alien tech. The very tools meant to pacify Earth were now being used against them. How? Zeln didn't understand. Their tech should have been decades, centuries ahead, but humans didn't wait to evolve. They stole evolution, they hacked it, bent it, used it like a weapon. Down below, in the ruins of old Shanghai, Major Tessa Rourke stood with her back against a crumbling wall, blood dripping from her temple. Her squad was gone, ambushed when they tried to take out a landing corps. But she wasn't crying. She was smiling. "Idiots came thinking we'd roll over," she muttered, checking the charge on her stolen plasma cutter. "They thought we'd kneel for tech and a promise of order. They don't get it. We've been living in chaos since we learned to crawl. This question mark, this is just Tuesday." From her pack, she pulled out the relic of the resistance, a rusted old radio that somehow still worked when all else failed. She turned the dial slowly, carefully, until a voice crackled through. "Repeat. Target Delta 9 breached. They've got no shields. Repeat, no shields." She grinned. "All right then, Earth," she whispered. "Let's send these bastards home." Back on the command ship, Zeln felt the tremor under his feet before he heard the explosion. A deep, angry boom that reverberated through the metal walls like a heartbeat from a dying animal. He rushed to the viewing deck. Outside, one of their smaller orbitals, the defense satellite VE-23, was spiraling. Flames danced along its hull. It shattered against Earth's atmosphere in a fiery blaze, a streak of failure falling into the Pacific. "How?" he demanded, spinning toward the tech crew. "That satellite was protected by 3 layers of shielding." The youngest among them, a soft-spoken analyst named Rail, answered without turning from her console. A human rocket, launched from a desert outpost in Nevada. Not military grade. Looked like parts from scrap. But it hit perfectly. They don't have the targeting ability. They do now. Zeln's mouth dried. All around him, reports came flooding in. Ship 17, disabled in Brazilian airspace by lightning strikes that shouldn't have existed in that zone. Ground crew in northern Canada lost contact. Last recorded data shows animal migration patterns shifting, as if predicting K'lar patrols. Thousands of human outposts rising out of nowhere, many underground, others in natural caves shielded from scans. Earth had gone dark in all the wrong ways. And humans, they were still laughing. In the middle of a burning forest somewhere in eastern Russia, an old man sat with a boy beside a fire. K'lar drones circled above, silent and shining like artificial stars. But they did not strike. The boy looked up. Why don't they attack? The old man lit his pipe. Because they don't know who we are anymore. But we're the same, aren't we? No, lad, not anymore. We remembered. Remembered what? The old man didn't smile. He just stared into the fire. That we were born of the earth. And when you hurt the earth, you hurt us. But when you hurt us, the earth remembers. He pointed at the sky. They thought they came to fix something broken. But we ain't broken. We're wild. And wild things don't like cages. Zeln stared out over the earth and felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not frustration. Fear. He'd never feared a planet before. Open a channel to the council, he barked. We're initiating retreat protocols. We'll monitor remotely and observe from the far belt. This mission is compromised. But before the communication could go through, the ship shook again. Harder this time. Emergency lights flared. Screens went black. Alarms screamed across the deck. K'lar officers scrambled. Zeln ran to the side viewport. A solar storm, massive, unexpected, violent, was forming around the Earth's sun, flaring toward their position. No time to adjust. No shield could hold. This isn't scheduled, Rel cried out. There was no sign. Because the planet wasn't just reacting anymore. It was planning. The K'lar had arrived thinking they were gods, but they were intruders. Unwelcome, uninvited, and now hunted. Zeln gripped the side rail as the solar flare made contact with the outer hull. Systems sparked and died. The ship groaned, like a dying beast in the dark. Shut it down, he gasped. Shut down everything non-essential. Go dark. Maybe if we stop interfering, it'll stop. But even he didn't believe that. Not anymore. Because deep inside, he'd finally understood what the elders meant. Humans weren't just dangerous because of their weapons, or their resilience, or even their rage. They were dangerous because they were a part of something bigger, something primal, something ancient. The Earth. And the Earth was angry. Silence spread across the command deck like a fog after the storm. The solar flare had burned through half of their auxiliary power systems, leaving parts of the K'lar's flagship drifting in low orbit, limping like a wounded predator. Lights flickered. Gravity fluctuated. The hum of their technological superiority was now replaced with the eerie groan of survival. Zeln stood at the core viewport, staring down at the swirling clouds over Earth's surface. The planet seemed alive now, not metaphorically, not through some poetic hallucination, but actually alive. Like it was watching. Waiting. K'tul staggered in from the rear corridor, one of his arms bandaged, his face paler than usual. 2 more cruisers have gone dark. No signs of impact, no explosions. Just silence. Zeln turned slowly. What do you mean, silence? They didn't send distress calls. No signals. It's like they were swallowed. A sharp, bitter chill ran down Zeln's spine. He didn't believe in ghosts, but this planet, this Earth, was starting to feel haunted. Not by spirits, but by consequences. "How long until the backup engines come online?" he asked. K'tul hesitated. 5 cycles, maybe more. There's another problem." "Of course there is." "The humans, they've begun broadcasting. Not in their usual chaotic manner. This is organized, targeted. They're sending it on our frequencies, using our own technology against us." Zheln's eyes narrowed. "Show me." K'tul pressed a panel, and the central screen flared to life. A grainy video feed appeared, showing a woman in military gear, short hair, dark eyes, blood on her cheek, and fire in her voice. "This is Commander Tessa Rourke of the Global Resistance. I'm not going to waste time pretending we didn't start this late. We were asleep, divided, fighting ourselves. But your invasion changed that." She stepped forward, the camera slightly shaking with each motion. "You didn't just awaken Earth. You awakened us. And you made one critical mistake, one your elders tried to warn you about." The feed crackled, then cleared to her final words. "You forgot that we don't bow. Not to kings, not to gods, and sure as hell not to you." The screen cut to black. Zheln stared for a long time, then sat down slowly, like his bones had turned to stone. "Why didn't we listen?" he whispered. K'tul didn't answer. What could he say? Pride had brought them here. Pride and the illusion of control. Far below, in the remains of what used to be Denver, Commander Rourke slammed the radio receiver down on the table, exhaling hard. The bunker stank of sweat, smoke, and metal. Her crew was exhausted, eyes sunken, hands blistered, nerves fried, but they were alive, and more importantly, they were winning. "We intercepted their command routing," said a young coder named Ravi. "We've got partial control of their surveillance network." "Good," she replied, wiping blood from her brow. "Use it. Feed them lies. Confuse their ships. Make them think we're in the wrong place." "We already have. 2 of their cruisers went chasing ghosts in Antarctica. Wasted an entire day searching for a fake stronghold." Tessa grinned. Not because it was funny, but because it worked. For once, humans were ahead in a game they weren't supposed to survive. "Keep the pressure on," she said. "Don't give them time to think. If they start thinking, they'll remember they're supposed to be smarter than us." "They already forgot that," Ravi smirked, "or they wouldn't be bleeding all over our skies." In the Himalayan mountains, hidden inside an ancient temple wired with modern tech, a council of human leaders gathered. Not presidents, not generals, just survivors, scientists, and fighters. "We have a chance," said Dr. Lin, a climatologist turned resistance strategist. "The Earth is responding to their presence. Every time they alter a system, weather, land, energy, it pushes back. More than that, it targets." "Are you saying the planet's sentient?" asked a rebel leader from Africa. "I'm saying, we've always been part of a living system. We forgot. But now it remembers us, and it's angry." The room went silent. Then an old woman from the Brazilian rainforests, Mariana, one of the last spirit guides of her tribe, stood and spoke softly. "We told stories of this time, of the Sky Ones who would come, who would pierce the skies and treat Earth like a broken thing to be fixed. But Earth is not broken. It's alive, and it protects its children when they remember how to speak to it." Dr. Lin nodded. "Then we speak louder. We use the planet. We sync with it. Let them feel the wrath of every ocean, every storm, every mountain they tried to conquer." On board the K'lar flagship, Zheln reviewed the long list of failures. Too many losses, too much resistance. Every tactic countered. Every attempt at pacification turned into provocation. He finally admitted the truth. They hadn't underestimated humans. They'd underestimated Earth. And Earth had teeth. "Begin evacuation procedures," he ordered. K'tul blinked. "Evacuation? We cannot win this. We cannot control this species without destroying their home, and destroying their home means destroying the one thing that's keeping us alive up here." K'tul was quiet. He didn't disagree. "But the Council is light years away. They see data, not death. They didn't hear the woman's voice. They didn't see the look in her eyes. She wasn't fighting for her people. She was fighting for her planet." Jeln stood, facing the blue orb through the glass once more. "Prepare the fleet for immediate retreat. Initiate auto-wipe of K'lar tech left behind, and leave a warning beacon." "A warning?" Jeln nodded grimly. "Let it say, 'Do not return. Earth is not conquered. Earth conquers.'" But Earth wasn't done yet. As the K'lar ships began shifting course, preparing for hyperwarp beyond the solar belt, Earth launched one last strike. Not from guns, but from unity. Massive broadcast stations across the globe, hijacked and combined with K'lar communication towers, beamed one final message into space. It was not a threat, not a challenge. It was a story. The story of a race born from dirt and fire and blood, of people who built empires, fell into chaos, then rose again. A race that made mistakes, but never stopped moving forward. A race that learned to defy odds, even when outgunned, outmatched, and outnumbered, and now a race reborn, tied not just to each other, but to the very soul of their planet. "We are humanity, and we are the fury of Earth." The message pulsed out like a heartbeat. The K'lar received it in silence, and for the first time in 100 generations they fled. Not from weapons, not from extinction, but from a species they had never truly understood. A species that, when cornered, did not beg. It roared. The skies were finally quiet. For the first time in months, no alien ships floated above the cities. No glowing scanners buzzed across the surface. The eerie hum of K'lar technology, once a constant shadow in the air, had vanished like a ghost. The invaders were gone. The last of their ships had blinked out of Earth's orbit in a single, unified retreat, silent and swift. But what they left behind was anything but silence. The world lay in ruins. New York was half underwater. Beijing's skyline was torn to splinters. Forests had burned. Rivers had changed course. Crops had died. Entire regions had turned into glass fields and wastelands from the power surges and scorched air trails of fallen K'lar tech. And yet, against all odds, humanity stood. Commander Tessa Rourke limped across the remains of what used to be a highway near the Rockies, her right arm wrapped in cloth, ribs still healing from the last ambush. But her voice was strong when she addressed the survivors lined up along the ridge. Men, women, children, even a few animals that had somehow survived alongside them. "No more hiding," she said. "No more bunkers. They're gone." A small cheer broke out. Some clapped, others cried. A few just stood in stunned silence. Victory, it turned out, was a strange thing after so much loss. "But this isn't over," she continued, raising her voice. "Not really. Because what they left behind, it's still here. Their tech, their poison, their damage. The Earth may have fought with us, but she's hurt too. So now we do what we always do." She looked out over the charred remains of trees that once stretched to the sky. "We rebuild." In southern India, in a village that once had power only a few hours a day, children now ran across fields lit by re-engineered K'lar solar grids. The resistance had salvaged parts of the alien tech and turned it into something useful, renewable, simple, and open source. The village elder, a wiry man named Pavan, walked with his grandson along the edge of the newly seeded rice field. "What if they come back?" the boy asked quietly. Pavan didn't smile, but his eyes were calm. Then they'll come back to something stronger than what they left. Us? He nodded. Us, but also her. He bent down and ran his fingers through the soil. It was richer now, healthier, as if the earth had absorbed the alien tech, broken it down, and recycled it back into life. She remembers, Pavan said, and now so do we. Far in the north, Dr. Lin stood before the United World Assembly, a makeshift coalition formed not of politicians, but of leaders chosen by the resistance. Scientists, healers, farmers, engineers, and fighters. People who had earned the right to shape what came next. We have to be honest, she said. We won the war, but not without cost. There are genetic anomalies showing up near K'lar crash sites, mutations, behavioral shifts in wildlife, even some changes in the magnetic field around the poles. What are you saying? Asked a former general from Argentina. I'm saying the Earth is evolving. A ripple went through the room. Not naturally, Lin continued. She responded to the K'lar, yes, but something in that response stuck. It's like the planet is still listening, still watching, still aware. Good, said a woman from Kenya. Let her be. Maybe it's time we learn to listen back. That idea didn't scare them. It humbled them. Deep in a valley near the Andes, a boy named Mateo was born under a blood moon. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Not red, not alien, just different. His heartbeat pulsed in sync with the earth below him. The midwives said nothing, but later one whispered to his mother, "This child is of earth." She believed it, and so did others. Around the world, children were being born with changes, subtle ones, heightened senses, a strange awareness of weather patterns, dreams that seemed to come from the soil itself. It wasn't every child. Just a few, enough to notice. They called them echo children, not mutants, not freaks, just the first generation truly bonded with the planet. And the planet, it seemed, was bonding back. K'tul sat in a chamber of shadows, light years away from Earth. The K'lar Council had summoned him. Not Zeln, who now lived in quiet exile, disgraced but alive. K'tul had become the new voice, the reluctant witness to what had happened. The council's faces flickered above him, cold and pale. You failed to bring order, one said. You retreated without command, another added. K'tul didn't flinch. You sent us to dominate a world you never understood, he said calmly. You taught us to treat them like animals, but they are not animals. He paused, then added, They are the fire that comes after extinction. The council murmured. One of them, the oldest, narrowed her eyes. Are you saying Earth was alive? K'tul stared up at them. No, he said. I'm saying it woke up, and the humans are its voice now. The council fell silent, because they felt it too. The K'lar hadn't just lost a planet, they'd created something dangerous, something unknown. In an old, broken church in rural Italy, Tessa Rourke sat on a bench, staring at the stained glass windows cracked by tremors. She wasn't a believer, not in gods, not in fate, but something inside her felt shifted, deeper than survival, more than just victory. She reached down and picked up a seed that had sprouted through the stone floor. Green, vibrant, alive. Funny, she said aloud, though no one was around. You nearly died, and now you're stronger than ever. She wasn't just talking about the plant. Her radio buzzed. A message from the Northern Rebuilders Council. They were calling for a meeting. Discussion of intercontinental infrastructure, education, healthcare. A new global language that blended words from dozens of regions into something human, not nationalist. She smiled. Because even after all the fire, humanity still chose to build. And far below, deeper than any scanner could reach, under the crust of Earth itself, something stirred. Not malevolent, not divine, just aware. It had tasted war, felt the pain of invasion. It had seen its children rise up and fight for it, and in return, it had sheltered them, empowered them, changed them. Now it watched, quiet, patient, alive. For Earth was not just a rock floating through space, it was home. It was memory, it was fury, and it would never be underestimated again. The rain had changed. It still fell from the sky, still soaked the ground and carved rivers through the valleys, but now it felt different, heavier, like each drop carried a memory of the fire, the ash, the screams, and the silence that followed. People noticed. They didn't talk about it much, but they noticed, especially the children. Matteo stood in the middle of the village square, barefoot, head tilted to the sky. He didn't flinch when the rain hit him, didn't blink when the lightning cracked overhead. His mother, watching from under the edge of a shelter made of woven K'lar alloy and bamboo, said nothing. She had long stopped trying to pull him inside during storms. The boy understood something the rest of them didn't. When the thunder rolled, he listened. When the wind howled through the valley, he whispered back. And when the rains fell, he opened his arms, not to shield, but to welcome. The elders called him the Seed, not as a title, but as a quiet truth. Matteo was one of the first of the Echo children, and he was growing into something they couldn't explain. But they weren't afraid. Not yet. Tessa Rourke stood before a wall of engineers and scientists in the newly rebuilt structure that once served as a K'lar processing station. They had stripped it down and turned it into a research compound. The walls still pulsed faintly with alien energy, but now it worked for humans, not against them. "You've all seen the satellite readings," she said, voice sharp and tired from weeks of traveling across ruined countries. Magnetic fields shifting, plant life accelerating, wildlife patterns evolving at unnatural rates. Something's changing down there. "We think the planet's still adapting," said Dr. Lin, who now headed the Earth-Terra integration project. "But it's not chaotic. There's structure, rhythm, a kind of natural programming, almost like an immune response." "Is it dangerous?" Lin hesitated. "To us?" "Not directly, but it's fast. Too fast. Trees regrowing in days, insects forming swarms that communicate across miles, new species appearing near former K'lar crash sites. Not alien, but not ours either. Hybrids." Someone in the room laughed nervously. "So what? You're saying Earth's evolving into a weapon?" Lin didn't smile. "I'm saying it already was. We just never gave it a reason to activate." Tessa folded her arms. "We need a plan. Something real. We survived the K'lar, but if Earth keeps changing this fast, we'll be guests in our own home." "We already are," Lin said softly. In an underground facility once used as a K'lar supply depot, Ravi crouched over a power grid, welding wires back into place while a small girl, barely 10, watched with curious eyes. Her name was Safi, another Echo child. "You can feel it, can't you?" she asked, her voice light and strange. Ravi paused mid-solder. "Feel what?" "The humming." He blinked. "What humming?" She touched the wall gently. "It talks. Not in words. Just feelings." He stared at her, unsure if she was just being imaginative. But then she turned and looked at him with eyes that didn't seem like they belonged to a child at all. "They're not coming back," she said. "Who?" "The Sky people." "How do you know?" She shrugged. "Because Earth doesn't want them anymore." Far from the cities, in the thick, reborn jungles of South America, Mariana walked barefoot through vines that glowed faintly in the moonlight. Beside her were 3 of the Echo children, silent and observant. They came here often, not to play, not to explore, but to listen. The trees spoke to them, not with words, not like stories or commands. It was in the way the leaves rustled, in the way the roots pulsed under the soil. They were tuning into something deeper. Mariana didn't interfere. She was only their guide. She had seen the signs in her dreams long before the first ship ever fell. "You will lead us forward," she whispered to them. The children said nothing. But they knew. In the vast, icy silence of the northern pole, a man named Einar carved out space in a buried research station. He was a former climate scientist who had stayed behind when others fled. His job was simple now: observation, measurement, survival. Except the numbers made no sense. Solar activity was rising again, but Earth wasn't reacting with disruption. It was reacting with synchronization, like it had learned the pattern, like it was adjusting its breathing to match the sun's rhythm. And deep below the ice, something moved. Not a creature, not a ship, a current, warm, powerful, alive. He sent his data to the Central Command and added one line in the message footer. "I don't think we've seen the final phase of this yet." In space, where the K'lar had once hovered in prideful silence, now only one ship remained, a lone observer, cloaked and distant, tasked with monitoring Earth from afar. The Council had ordered strict non-interference. They weren't coming back, not now, not ever. But they watched. And what they saw terrified them more than war. The planet was alive, evolving. Its inhabitants, once fragmented, chaotic, and stubborn, were becoming something new, something whole. There were no longer nations in the traditional sense. Borders still existed, but they were fading fast. Rebuilding required cooperation. New technology had to be shared. People didn't fight over flags now. They fought to preserve stability, to maintain the delicate balance between human ambition and Earth's unpredictable guidance. A dangerous balance, because Earth gave signs, yes, but it also gave warnings. Tremors that shook only one city at a time, storms that stalled before reaching a village, lightning that arced around a convoy but struck a mining outpost that had drilled too deep into sacred ground. The Earth was watching them too. Tessa sat alone on a cliff outside the Greenland Assembly Center, watching the sky bleed from orange to purple. She lit a small fire, just a ritual now, a habit left over from the war, and stared at the flame. She felt like she was waiting for something, like everyone was. Humanity had survived extinction not by killing the enemy, but by waking up, remembering who they were, and more importantly, where they came from. But with every new birth of an Echo child, every shift in the ecosystem, every bizarre anomaly, it was becoming clearer. They weren't going back to how things were. This wasn't recovery. This was rebirth. Her radio crackled. A voice she hadn't heard in months. Zelns. Tessa. She didn't speak. She just listened. "I left a data packet near your last known position. I've learned things. You may want to see them. Earth is becoming something new. But not all change is stable. You should know that. You should be ready." The message ended. No coordinates, no signature, just a name and a warning. Tessa stared at the fire a little longer, then stood. Because maybe the war wasn't over. Maybe it had only shifted. Not alien versus human, but human versus what they were becoming. The data packet wasn't hidden in some secure vault or encrypted K'lar safe box. It was in a rusted-out shipping container buried in ice and dust near an old weather station in the Arctic. Tessa found it exactly where Jeln had said, buried beneath snow that hadn't melted in decades, a place long forgotten by anyone who didn't remember the war. It took her almost an hour to dig it out. When she finally pulled the container open, it hissed, a pressurized seal breaking, and a single sphere rolled forward. K'lar design, smooth and dark, humming with a faint green glow. She hesitated, then touched it. The sphere lit up and opened like a blooming flower. A projection appeared in the cold air. Zhelin's face, older and thinner than before, filled the space above the sphere. "If you're seeing this, you've probably realized the planet isn't calming down," he began, his voice low, almost reluctant. "You think you've won. You think the Earth has simply awakened, guided by some ancient instinct to defend itself and its children. That's true. But not the whole truth." The image flickered, then resumed. "Before we left, one of our ships scanned the Earth's core, something we weren't allowed to do by K'lar law until the full cycle of integration had passed. I disobeyed that law. And what I saw shouldn't exist." Zhelin leaned forward, his eyes darker now, troubled. "There's something down there. Not a creature, not a machine. It's old, older than the planet maybe, a kind of consciousness, dormant, or at least it was." Tessa stepped back, heart thumping. The cold air seemed to get thicker. "Whatever it is, the K'lar couldn't define it. We called it the submind, a presence buried beneath the crust, layered under heat and pressure. It's not alive in the way we understand. It doesn't think, it feels. And after the war, it started responding." Zhelin paused. His final words were clipped and grim. "You didn't just wake the planet. You woke something inside it. And now, it's learning through you." The projection shut off. Tessa stood frozen. All this time they thought Earth was acting alone. They believed they were in sync with the planet itself, its storms, its soil, its grief and fury. But if something else was buried within it, something conscious, something ancient, they hadn't won a war. They had become part of something else's evolution. The Council in Greenland didn't take the news well. "This is fear-mongering," barked Admiral Rowan, pounding a fist on the table. "We finally have unity, peace, progress, and now this ghost story from a disgraced alien?" "He's not wrong," Lynn said quietly, pushing forward a tablet. "My team's scans confirm what Zhelin recorded. There's a consistent energy signal originating from deep below the mantle. It pulses, in rhythm, like a heartbeat." Rowan scoffed. "A heartbeat of what? Magma?" "It started right after the K'lar left, and it's increasing." "We should investigate," said a voice from the Eastern African delegation. "If we're part of a larger system now, something planetary, we need to understand it, before it understands us too well." Silence followed. No one wanted to admit it, but they all felt it. The strange calm that came after the storm wasn't peace. It was potential. The planet was changing, not just ecologically, but intentionally, and the Echo Children were the first signs. Matteo stood in the forest clearing, his hands pressed to the bark of a glowing tree. It hadn't been there a year ago. It grew after the war, sprouting through the wreckage of a K'lar engine that had buried itself into the ground. No one planted it. It just appeared. And it grew fast. The leaves shimmered with a silver hue. The trunk pulsed faintly with warmth. Animals wouldn't go near it, but the Echo Children did. "What does it say?" asked Safi, stepping beside him. "It doesn't say," Matteo whispered. "It dreams." Safi tilted her head. "Trees don't dream." "This one does. They all do now." More and more of the children had begun reporting strange visions. Dreams that didn't feel like dreams at all. Memories of places they'd never been. People they'd never met. Some described ancient landscapes. Others spoke of stars they could name but never saw. They felt pulled, as if something beneath the surface was guiding them toward something bigger. Matteo placed his hand against the tree again. It's not finished waking up. In Japan, an elite recon team, composed of ex-soldiers, environmental trackers, and eco-aligned researchers, descended into the Aso caldera, one of the few places showing seismic anomalies that matched the rhythm Lin's team had recorded. What they found was not a fault line. It was a pattern. The rocks were etched with markings no civilization on Earth could trace, symbols that vibrated faintly when touched, geometric lines that pulsed like veins under the Earth's skin. One of the Echo children, a teenager named Aya, stepped into the pattern's center without hesitation. The whole chamber lit up in soft, golden light. "It sees her," whispered one of the scientists. But Aya didn't look back. She whispered a single word before the light consumed her. "Remember." And then she was gone. No scorch marks, no signs of struggle, just gone. The room went dark again, and the pattern, once dormant, began to hum. Tessa flew to the Aso site within 12 hours. The team was rattled. Aya's disappearance had spooked even the hardened ex-soldiers, but there were no signs of danger, no residual energy signatures, just the haunting memory of a child who walked into light and vanished. She stood in the middle of the circle, staring at the still pulsing stone beneath her boots. "This isn't over," she murmured. Dr. Lin, arriving behind her, nodded slowly. "Number, this is the beginning of something we never planned for." "What do? We decide what kind of species we want to be, because whatever's beneath us, it's watching, and it's waiting to see if we're worthy." In orbit, the lone K'lar observer ship floated like a ghost. Inside, K'tul reviewed the latest data stream. Energy readings from Earth were climbing, measured in units the K'lar didn't even have until Earth forced them to invent them. The sub-mind, as Jeln had called it, wasn't just learning, it was awakening. And it was doing it through humans. K'tul leaned back in his chair, scales twitching. He'd seen many worlds, watched empires fall, species burn, entire ecosystems dissolve under the pressure of the K'lar's misguided guidance. But Earth had flipped the script, not by resisting with brute strength, but by changing the rules entirely. The humans didn't just adapt, they merged with their world, with something beneath it. And maybe, just maybe, they were becoming something new entirely. K'tul recorded a message for the Council. "Do not return. Earth is not ours to touch anymore. It belongs to itself now. And if we disturb it again, it will not be so forgiving." The whispers had begun to spread, not through radio waves or printed words, but through the soil, the rivers, the wind, and the skin of those who felt it first. The Echo children were no longer just anomalies. They were messages, embodied transmissions from something older than the planet itself, something now stirring fully awake. In every major region, reports were coming in. Children disappearing into forests and reappearing days later unharmed, but changed. Fields of crops that shouldn't grow without light blooming in full color under starlight. Birds migrating in patterns that traced ancient shapes, shapes that matched the markings found deep below Aso volcano, near the vanished child Aya. And most alarming of all, the dreams. Not dreams in the ordinary sense. These were shared, repeating visions experienced by thousands at once. Adults now, not just children, farmers in Brazil, engineers in Cairo, and old women in rural Alaska, each waking with the same phrases on their tongues, the same symbols drawn into the frost, the same trembling fear. They dreamed of the Earth's heart, and it was watching them. Tessa Rourke hadn't slept properly in days. When she did close her eyes, she saw golden fields rippling with blood-red trees, a sky split into 7 suns, a pulse beneath the ground like a second heartbeat in her chest. Sometimes she woke, sweating. Other times, she wept without knowing why. And always, Aya was there, standing in the distance, whispering something Tessa could never quite hear. Lynn was waiting in her command tent, her eyes heavy from her own sleepless nights. She handed Tessa a tablet. We ran deep ground scans again. The pulse beneath Aso has doubled in frequency. It's spreading. The same frequency is now showing up beneath Mount Erebus in Antarctica, the Congo Basin, and the Grand Canyon. Tessa rubbed her temples. So this thing, this sub-mind, it's not local. Lynn shook her head. It's everywhere, beneath all of us. Maybe it always was. They were no longer dealing with a simple planetary defense response. This wasn't about weather patterns or ecological retaliation. This was intelligence, memory, a system learning and reaching, possibly reshaping all life connected to the planet's crust. And somehow, it was using the Echo Children as keys. We're not in control, Lynn said. We're passengers now. Tessa didn't argue, because deep down she knew. They had survived the K'lar invasion by becoming one with Earth. But in doing so, they'd opened the door to something else, something far more ancient and far less forgiving. Matteo hadn't spoken in over a week. He simply walked, sometimes alone, sometimes with a growing group of children behind him, through the jungles of what used to be the Amazon, now renamed simply the Living Core. The trees moved for him. They bent. Paths opened where there were none. Vines parted. Roots seemed to breathe. Adults tried to follow but got lost. Their compasses spun. Their drones crashed. The jungle allowed only the Echo Children to pass freely, as if the forest recognized them. They weren't just human anymore. They were Earth's emissaries. At the center of the Living Core, they found it, a crystalline structure growing from the ground like a throne of fossilized light, ancient, radiating a rhythm felt in bones more than ears. Matteo knelt before it. Safi stood beside him, wide-eyed. Is it alive? No, Matteo whispered. It's becoming. The United Earth Assembly, formed from the ashes of the old world, was now fractured again. Not by politics, but by fear. What are these children turning into? A scientist from the north questioned during the emergency summit. They speak in unison. They disappear into forests for days and return unharmed. Their eyes glow during electrical storms. They're in contact with something beneath the earth, Lynn said calmly. Not alien, not divine, something deep, something old. Then we need to contain them, said a general, cold and brutal. This is how it starts. First they change the kids, then they change us. Then we're extinct. We're already changed, Tessa said, her voice quiet but cutting. You think we can walk away from what happened? Go back to factories and flags and financial markets? She looked around the room. You didn't defeat the K'lar. Earth did. And now Earth is giving us a chance, a second evolution. You're scared because it doesn't look like the future you expected. She stepped closer. But maybe it's the one we need. That night, across the globe, more people began to dream. This time, not of landscapes. They dreamed of choices. One path led to preservation, to merging with the sub-mind, adapting fully, becoming part of the planetary intelligence as caretakers. The other path led to rejection, to containment, resistance, and eventual decay as Earth slowly refused to support those who stood apart from it. And in every dream, Aya stood between the two roads, glowing like the moon. She said only one thing. You cannot go back, only forward. Choose. Far below the surface, in the sub-mind's silent chambers, awareness bloomed. Not language, not thought, just recognition. It had existed here for eons, dormant, embedded in the crust, the heat, the iron bones of the planet. It had seen planets form and die. It had been buried by ice, silence, and time. Then came the K'lar. Their energy prodded it, awakened fragments. But it was humans who gave it voice, their pain, their fury, their desperate survival, their love for the dying forests and ruined cities, that reached it. And now it was learning, feeling, reacting. It did not understand war or nations or technology, but it understood connection. So it reached out, first through trees, then water, then into them, the children, the dreamers, the few whose hearts beat not just for themselves, but for something greater. And it whispered to them, "Merge or perish." Atop the Greenland cliffs, Tessa stood facing the ocean, waves smashing against the rock far below. Behind her, Lynn approached slowly. "They want a vote." "I know. They want to decide whether to isolate the Echo Children, cut them off, study them, contain the submine's spread." "I figured." "What do you want?" Tessa turned. Her face was pale, her hands clenched at her sides. "I want to live, not just survive, not go back to plastic cities and false peace and borders that mean nothing when the ground beneath your feet is trying to talk to you." Lynn nodded slowly. "So do I." Tessa looked up at the stars, brighter than before. Sharper, like the sky was watching back. "We tried being separate from the Earth," she whispered. "It almost killed us. Now it's offering us a second chance." She turned to Lynn. "I say we take it." And far in the stars, on the K'lar Council's homeworld, alarms began to sound. An energy surge from Earth had breached detection thresholds, not as a weapon, but as a signal. The submind had sent its first true broadcast. It was not a threat. It was an invitation, a beacon of rebirth. And in its core, encoded in a language no K'lar had ever seen, was one chilling message. "The new stewards of Earth have awakened. Do not return. You are no longer welcome." The vote passed, not unanimously, but decisively enough. After weeks of bitter debate, fear, and moments of clarity, the United Earth Assembly reached a decision that would echo through every generation to follow. No isolation, no containment. The Echo Children would not be cut off, imprisoned, or dissected. They would be embraced, guided, protected, and studied in partnership, not fear. Humanity would not reject what it was becoming. It would walk into it. The Earth, in turn, responded. The storms ceased. The quakes slowed. And for the first time in centuries, the ozone layer healed faster than any model had predicted. Rivers once dammed burst free and rerouted themselves, not destructively, but precisely, forming natural irrigation for dry lands long thought barren. A desert in North Africa bloomed with wildflowers in less than a week. Coral reefs near Australia, once bleached into bone-white silence, surged with color and life. Earth was responding like a living thing, no longer defending but welcoming. It had made its choice, too. Matteo stood at the heart of the living core. Around him, hundreds of children, Echo Children, stood in silence. The crystalline structure at the forest center was no longer pulsing softly. It throbbed with radiant light, forming arcs of energy between itself and the soil, the trees, even the sky. Tessa arrived by aircraft, stepping out alone. She wore no armor, no weapons, no title, just a simple coat, boots, and the weight of 1,000 decisions behind her. Matteo turned when she approached. "Are you afraid?" he asked. Tessa looked around at the children, the trees, the humming light. "Not anymore," she said. "You should be." She smiled sadly. "I was, for a long time. But I realized we were afraid of the wrong thing." "What thing?" "Losing control." Matteo nodded slowly. "It's not about control anymore," he said. "It's about joining." Behind him, The other children closed their eyes. The light from the crystal intensified. A low vibration filled the air, so deep and resonant it bypassed the ears and went straight to the chest, the bones, the blood. Tessa stepped forward. "Can I see it?" she asked. Matteo extended his hand. When she touched his palm, the world dropped away. She wasn't standing in a jungle anymore. She wasn't standing anywhere at all. Instead, she was floating, in light, in memory, in a place that was not a place. Images drifted past her like dreams and stars and smoke. She saw Earth forming from dust, mountains rising and dying, oceans pouring into voids. Then came life, tiny and strange, crawling, growing, evolving, failing, restarting. Then came fire, war, industry, cities, towers that scratched the sky, and death, so much death, but not the end. Then came connection, the K'lar's invasion, the spark, the fury, and finally, the awakening. She saw the submind. It had no face, no voice. It wasn't a being, it was a process. A system deeper than instinct, older than choice. It had been sleeping inside the planet like a heartbeat, waiting for a soul. And when humanity reached the edge of destruction, when their collective pain sang through the roots and rivers and skies, the submind had heard them. Tessa felt it now. What Earth truly was. Not a home, not a rock, but a womb. A vessel built for more than shelter, a planet designed by accident or something far older to grow not just life, but awareness. And now, that awareness had reached back, not to dominate, not to enslave, but to invite, merge, become more, leave behind the broken, take what matters, let go of what poisons. Tessa felt her heart slowing, not dying, but sinking. To a deeper rhythm, the Earth's, the submind's, her own, and she understood. This wasn't the end of humanity. It was their final birth. She woke with a gasp. Matteo was still holding her hand. The others were watching. Behind her, Lynn stepped forward, trembling. "You saw it too," she whispered. Tessa nodded. "Then we know what comes next." In the months that followed, Earth changed faster than ever, but not violently, not with panic, with purpose. People began forming communes of sync, settlements built not around cities or governments, but harmonies, locations that responded to Earth's new signals. These weren't just ecological centers, they were bridges. Each one housed a few echo children, sometimes adults who had awakened late. The submind used them like threads in a net, weaving its way into the human species, not to erase them, but to evolve them. Old languages blended into new dialects. Music changed, deep, rhythmic, primal songs that mimicked the pulse of the earth. Fewer children were born, but those that were arrived already humming to themselves in strange tones, eyes glowing faintly, skin resonating with light under full moons. War became obsolete, not from law, but from disinterest. Earth no longer tolerated violent intent. Weapons rusted, drones failed, oil refused to ignite. Earth had made its terms clear. You were either part of the whole, or you were left behind. A few resisted, fled into old cities, built underground bunkers, hoarded remnants of technology, and clung to the myth of human supremacy. They withered, not because Earth punished them, but because it simply stopped acknowledging them. The wind avoided them. The animals left. The soil refused to grow anything in their hands. Even water tasted stale. Eventually, most of them returned, quiet, humbled, ready to join. In orbit, the K'lar ship drifted in silent awe. K'tul remained at his post, observing Earth through lenses his ancestors could never have imagined. What he saw was not evolution. It was ascension, not into machines, not into gods, but into oneness. He spoke into his final report. Earth is no longer a planet as we understand it. It is a being, and humanity is now its neural web, each human a node, each dream a signal, each step a resonance. He paused. They did not defeat us with weapons. They survived us, transcended us. He looked into the shimmering blue globe. Do not return, not because they are dangerous, but because we are no longer capable of understanding what they've become. He sealed the message and turned the ship away. In the center of the living core, Matteo sat beneath the crystalline structure. It no longer glowed. It breathed in slow pulses of light. The last of the resistance leaders, the skeptics, the hesitant, had arrived. Tessa was there too, older now but strong. She looked at the boy, now a young man, and smiled. "You're not our future anymore," she said. "You're our present." Matteo looked at her gently. "Number you all are." He reached into the soil, pressed his fingers deep, and the entire forest lit up. Sky, ground, rivers, roots. Around the world, people stopped what they were doing. They felt it in their chests, in their hands, in their blood. A final surge, not destruction, not chaos, just a word, a feeling, a knowing. Earth had fully awakened, and humanity was now its voice, its dream, its heart. They came thinking Earth was just a planet. They left realizing it was a force. And we became its soul.